Have you ever noticed how sometimes life feels like a puzzle that refuses to be solved? Almost like you're caught in a loop, where every path leads right back to where you started. You try to go one way, and yet there's another voice pulling you back. This is the nature of a double bind, a place where choice appears to exist, but every choice seems to trap you deeper. And as you begin to think about that now, you might also wonder, what if understanding this could be the key to everything? Imagine for a moment the paradox of the barber's dilemma. In a small village, the barber shaves everyone who doesn't shave themselves. So does the barber shave himself? If he does, he violates the rule. If he doesn't, well, that's a problem too. What if life feels like that sometimes? What if we were given choices that aren't really choices at all? What if these pseudo-choices, wrapped in illusions of freedom, are what bind us to conflict, tugging us between what we want to do and what we're told we must do? Isn't it interesting how, at the very heart of this, is a deep confusion? A confusion that can live inside of us for years, even decades. Because when someone says, "You can choke yourself on my hand," what choice is there really? There's always an invitation to act, but sometimes the choices we think we have, they aren't choices at all. And maybe you can remember a time, perhaps as a child, perhaps later, when you felt this kind of pressure, when no matter what you did, it seemed wrong. And maybe you learned to laugh through the confusion, or maybe you froze, or maybe you became angry, and perhaps you've been carrying that experience with you ever since. Because double binds, they have a way of planting seeds that grow into thought viruses, twisting perceptions, and turning them into something else altogether. You might notice it in your relationships, your work, or even the way you speak to yourself. It's that sense of, if I do this, I'll lose. But if I don't do this, I'll also lose. But here's the thing. What if double binds aren't traps at all? What if they're invitations? Imagine for a moment every double bind is a doorway, one that leads not to conflict but to clarity. Because you see, the paradox only exists on one level of thinking. When you shift to a higher level, the bind disappears. Think about war. The only thing worse than losing a battle is winning it. Yet, within that bind lies the seed of courage, perseverance, and transformation. And maybe right now you're beginning to realize how these binds have shaped your life, and how, as you step back from them, you can see new choices emerging. Because true choice only exists where there are 3 possibilities, not 2. And with every new perspective, you begin to unlock more and more freedom. It's a little like stepping out of a maze and realizing the walls are only in your mind. And as you stand there, seeing the maze for what it is, you might notice a sense of lightness, a growing sense of power, as if something heavy has begun to lift. Now as you reflect on this, you can also begin to wonder, how many double binds have I already dissolved without even knowing it? How many more will disappear the moment I stop trying to choose between A and B and instead create a new option C? Because every double bind contains the seeds of its own resolution. Isn't it interesting how, the more you notice this, the more choices begin to appear everywhere. Choices that were always there, just waiting for you to see them. And maybe now, or maybe later, you'll find yourself smiling at the old binds that once seemed so powerful. You'll see them, recognize them, and let them go, because you no longer need them. And as those double binds dissolve, you might just begin to notice a new kind of freedom, one that grows stronger every day. And perhaps you've already noticed how some ideas, they just begin to settle in effortlessly, almost like planting seeds in rich, fertile soil. Some ideas take root quickly, while others unfold over time, quietly reshaping your thoughts, expanding possibilities, and shifting perspectives without needing you to consciously do anything at all. And isn't it fascinating how the mind works at so many levels? Like a symphony, each part playing its role, blending perfectly, often below the surface of awareness. And the brain, your brilliant adaptive brain, is always creating connections, adjusting patterns, weaving meaning. Sometimes these patterns bring clarity and strength, Other times they create conflict, knots in the mind. Double binds, loops of tension. And at the neurological level, a double bind is a kind of mental short circuit. It's a paradox that the brain tries to resolve. But every solution only creates more conflict. When faced with contradictory instructions, do this but don't do this, your nervous system lights up like a web of crossed wires. Should I go left or right, move forward or stay still? Each pathway contradicts the other, locking the mind into a feedback loop that feels endless. And this conflict doesn't just stay in the mind, it sinks deeper into the body, into your emotions, into your sense of identity. Your nervous system responds as if under constant threat, preparing for a danger that never fully arrives. But here's what's truly interesting. The body's response to a double bind is exactly the same as its response to being trapped. Fight, flight or freeze. Muscles tense. Breathing shallows. The mind races, but no real action can be taken because every option feels wrong. And that unresolved tension, the kind that never quite leaves, creates stress, disease and inner conflict that spills into every part of life. And maybe you can think of a time when you felt stuck, deeply stuck, between choices that weren't really choices. Maybe it was at work, in relationships, or even in a conversation with yourself. Should I speak up or should I stay quiet? If I do A, I'll regret it. If I don't do A, I'll regret that too. And the harder that you tried to solve it, the more tangled it became, until it felt almost like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. But what if there was another way? What if instead of resisting the double bind, you could lean into it? What if the paradox wasn't a trap, but a portal? Because, you see, the conscious mind is built for solving simple linear problems. But double binds, they live on a higher level, one where logic folds in on itself and forces you to grow. And the secret is this. The solution can never be found at the same level where the bind exists. You must rise above it. And when you do, when you allow the paradox to dissolve, something remarkable happens. Neurologically, your brain starts to rewire. New pathways emerge. The tension that once held you hostage begins to release. And your nervous system, so adaptive, so beautifully intelligent, shifts from contraction to expansion. And as that shift happens, you find yourself able to breathe more freely. Options that were once invisible begin to appear. The binds that seemed so unbreakable become almost laughable in their simplicity. Because double binds, they only have power when you play by their rules. And the moment you realise you can rewrite the rules, the game changes entirely. It's like stepping out of a cage you never realised was open. The bars were never real. They were just ideas, mental constructs. But now, as your mind softens and expands, as your neurons form new patterns, you begin to see the real power has always been yours. You begin to notice this new freedom in small ways, perhaps in conversations where you once felt stuck, or in moments where you used to hesitate. Suddenly there's space, room to breathe, to move, to choose. And you find your unconscious mind is already beginning to create new choices, ones you didn't even know were possible. You'll start to notice these choices naturally, without effort, as though they've always been there, just waiting for you to claim them. And as you stand here right now, at this turning point, you might begin to wonder, how many double binds have already been dissolved? How many more will dissolve in the next hour, the next day, the next week? And the beauty of this process is, it doesn't require struggle. It happens on its own, unfolding gently in the background of your mind. While you focus on living, every moment of tension becomes a doorway, every paradox an invitation. Because once you see the double bind for what it is, you can never be trapped by it again. And that is where real transformation begins. And here's where everything begins to change, because recognizing a double bind is already the first step towards freedom. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like finding the secret door in a maze. You might have just walked past it 100 times before, but now you know it's there. You can never get lost in the same way again. Let's go deeper, exploring how to break free from the double bind, in ways that are not only effortless, but profoundly transformative. You might notice how your unconscious mind is already curious about what's coming next. Because breaking the double bind, it isn't about fighting it. In fact, the more you resist it, the tighter it grips you. Instead, it's about expanding your awareness beyond the limited options it presents, like stepping out of a small room into a vast open field. And how do you do that? It all begins with awareness, choice, and reframing. Shifting perspectives to create space, where there was once only tension. Awareness, seeing the bind for what it is. Every double bind presents itself as a false choice. It often disguises itself with words like either or, this or that. But if you pause and look carefully, you'll notice the game being played. For example, if you speak up, you'll create conflict. But if you stay silent, you'll betray yourself. If you follow your passion, you'll fail. If you stay safe, you'll never live fully. If you express your emotions, you'll be seen as weak. If you hold them in, you'll suffocate inside. When you hear that voice inside, you or from others, pause for a moment. Just breathe. Notice the bind. Call it out for what it is. The moment you do, it begins to lose its power, because double binds, they thrive on unconsciousness. And awareness is like turning on the light in a dark room. Create a third option. The power of and. Double binds want you to choose between A and B. But what if neither A or B is the answer? What if there's a hidden C, an option that hasn't been revealed yet? Here's a powerful question to ask. What's the choice that neither A or B allows me to see? For example, instead of, should I focus on my career or my family? Ask, how can I build a life that supports both? Instead of, do I confront this person or avoid them? Ask, how can I express my truth while staying grounded and compassionate? The third option often lives on a higher level, a shift in perspective that makes the original problem irrelevant. Reframe the situation, change the meaning. You can also dissolve the double bind by changing the frame. Think of it like zooming out with a camera. The moment you expand the frame, the entire picture changes. For example, instead of, if I fail, I'll be humiliated, reframe failure as learning. Failure is not an ending, it's a step forward. Instead of, if I express vulnerability, I'll be judged, reframe vulnerability as strength, the power to be authentic no matter what. Double binds, they often feel like cages, because they rely on rigid, narrow meanings. But the moment you reframe, you unlock the door. The leverage paradox, agree and amplify. Here's a secret. Paradoxes can be playful. They don't have to trap you. They can set you free. One way to break free is by agreeing to amplify the paradox to the point of absurdity. Imagine someone says, you can't do that or you'll fail. Instead of resisting, you respond, you're right, and maybe failing spectacularly is exactly what I need to do next. This instantly changes the energy. It disrupts the bind, inviting creativity and laughter, where once there was only conflict. The self-reference, coming back to your own power. The core of most double binds is an external authority, a voice outside of you telling you what's right, what's wrong, who you should be, and what you must choose. The fastest way to dissolve this is to bring the power back to yourself. Ask yourself, what do I want? What's true for me right now? Not what others expect, not what the situation demands, but what is deeply, authentically yours. Because the moment you connect with your own truth, the bind unravels. There's no conflict when you're acting from a place of inner alignment. And here's the secret your unconscious mind already knows. You were never really bound in the first place. The bind was an illusion, a pattern of thought, and now that you see it, it dissolves, it fades. It softens into something else entirely, something lighter, freer, more spacious. And maybe, just maybe, as you walk through your life, you'll begin to notice how easy and naturally you can recognize and dissolve these binds. In conversation, in choices, in old patterns that once seemed so rigid. You'll find yourself smiling because you'll know the secret. There was always another option, always another way. And as you choose from this place of freedom, your life becomes an unfolding adventure, one where every moment holds new possibilities just waiting to be discovered.